New York friends. Kareem, Fabius. I first met Kareem in 1977. Kareem definitely enjoys life to the fullest. I have many great memories of her. Her best friend at the time was Fran Matos. Fran Matos. I used to take lunch breaks with Fran when she worked for either CBS or NBC. She worked for a powerful executive at that time. We would go to a huge church and meditate. I loved her mom. I haven't talked to Fran in many years. Anyone know where she is? Spruce Drury. Spruce was another person who the web of life binds us together. I knew her during the 70s. Fast forward 30 years, and she is on several conference calls with my brother John. It's a small world. I love reading her posts. George Mershon. George was another person who had many close friends of mine. There were many Latin people who loved to meditate. George was one of them. Fast forward 40 years and George and I are on Facebook. George is one of the few people who constantly responds to my posts. Tugomor Mati. Tugomor originally came from Russia many moons ago. He was an incredible concert pianist. As I remember, he defected while on tour. Tugomor loves to meditate. Fast forward 40 years ago, I'm seeing his life once again on Facebook. Richie Niles and Linda Pollock. As I remember, they were peas in a pod. They were incredible singers together. Both of them had an incredible sense of humor. I remember the audience laughing and clapping during many of their songs. Great hearts. I still read their Facebook posts 40 years later. Linda Gross. I first met Linda in New York in the mid-70s. She was learning how to meditate. Fast forward 40 plus years. She still loves to meditate. I feel the web of life tying us together through the years. We may have not seen each other many years, but the thread never gets severed. Steve O'Neill. Rest in peace, Steve. You led life to the fullest. My brother John and Hanley had great memories of your visit to Oxnard in the 70s. You were a great roommate. I will never forget your humor and laughter. Ira Woods. Ira was another person who during the 70s and early 80s was in my area of life. We weren't friends per se, yet we both loved to meditate. Ira has the passion of life. Fast forward 40 years, and I read how Ira helped his wife leave this planet in dignity. It was a tremendous and heartwarming story. It showed the love that he has inside. John Campbell. John worked in the food co-op in Queens. Many of my friends worked there. John knew the open-air markets in Brooklyn like nobody else. I have many fond memories of John. For a while, we lived in the same house. Susan Hubley. Wow, Susan Hubley. She was an inspiration to me. Susan was extremely kind to all. That was her nature. Combine that with meditation, and you become super kind. Karen, if you read my book on kindness, this is probably one of the best traits to have. I read with joy her Facebook post. We haven't seen each other in 30 years. Stuart Hoffman. Stuart was amazing at playing the keyboards and singing back in the 70s. Fast forward 40 years, and he's still amazing. I love this Facebook photo of his. It sums it up. His music comes from the universe. Yes, Stuart loves to meditate. Mickey Rotel. Mickey was definitely a character. He had a heart of gold. I have many fond memories of him. He worked in the film industry for many years. He loves to meditate. Fast forward 40 years, and I'm reading his Facebook post. Great person to know. Steve Soffer. I went to Steve's house for dinner in 1978. I still remember clear as day after dinner, Steve and I go into the kitchen. He makes a smoothie out of soybean ice cream. Steve and I are on the same wavelength in life. We both love to meditate. Steve has been practicing preventive medicine since the 70s. Here's a photo from one of his posts. Thanks, Steve, for you and Kathy being in my life. Both of you are inspiration. Richard, I like that. Stephen, thought you might. Picture of Santa Claus meditating. Larry Lustbader. The more I know Larry, the more I can see the genius in him. I first met Larry in New York City. He invited me to stay at his house. I had another offer. Fast forward 40 years, and I'm reading his Facebook post. He loves to meditate. Larry truly enjoys life. He has a thirst to discover his true nature. Keep on laughing, Larry. Tom Gannon. Tom and I lived in the same house for a while. He was an incredible guitar player and singer. He has a heart of gold. When I read his Facebook post, I can tell he has a deep love for all. Great person, great heart. Yes, he loves to meditate. Dennis Marciniak. I first met Dennis in New York City. I stayed at his house for a while. I learned that he had a professional football tryout for the LA Rams in the early 70s. Dennis was extremely practical and at the same time loved to meditate, both brains being used. Fast forward 40 years, and I love to read his posts on Facebook. Dennis is working and exploring the subconscious mind. Both of us are on the same wavelength, but that is another story to tell. Judy Provich. My brother John and I have great memories of Judy. She was a delight to be around. Judy loved to meditate. It showed in her day-to-day affairs. She loves life and has a deep passion for all. I haven't seen her in 30 plus years. I love her Facebook posts. Judy, thanks for being a friend to my brother and I. Steve Sitnick. I once remember a story that Steve told one night. He was riding a bike in Central Park that night. Mind you, not too good of an idea. At some point, a group of thieves surrounded him and demanded his money. Steve says something like, "Help me, Miraji." One of the thieves said, "I received knowledge, let him go." I still remember that 45 years later. Steve and I both love to cook. In fact, his profession was cooking. Yes, Steve loves to meditate. I've had many great memories of Steve. Irene Bettler. Irene loves to meditate. I'll always remember the journey we took with Fran. We drove from New York City to Tucson, Arizona. Do you remember seeing the 5 tornadoes stacked in the sky? I have never seen anything like that. I live in Kansas. Unfortunately, never saw a tornado. Thanks for your friendship with Fran, and you are in my heart. Matt Miller. Matt worked at the food co-op. By the way, he loves to meditate. Grin. Matt loves music and to play music. Years later, I love to read his posts. I love what he has to say and the music that he posts. Vinny. Verdiosa. As I remember, Vinny was from Brooklyn. I truly love his Facebook post. We are on the same wavelength. Of course, Vinny loves to meditate. I love to see the different expressions in life, and Vinny represents it. He has his own radio show. Jeffrey Herman. I've known Jeffrey since the 70s. Jeffrey could sing solo without any instruments being played and totally fill the room with his voice. Great guy. I loved his passion towards life. I've spent many great memories of spending time together. For a while, we were roommates. Howard Kent. Rest in peace, Howard. Your singing voice was angelic. Everyone loved your humor and laughter. A piece of you resides in my heart. I'm sure you're singing for the universe. Jan Ely. Jan was soft-spoken, yet he had the spirit of a wild horse, which means he did things the average person wouldn't do. For example, walking the entire Pacific Coast Trail from the border of Mexico to Canada. Jan would update his posts on Facebook along the way. It wasn't an easy journey, but he made it. Jan, thanks for being a part of my life. Michael Cohen. Mostly I knew the parents of Michael. His parents lived in New York while Michael lived in Atlanta. The entire family loved to meditate. I loved his parents. They're always a joy to be around. I still read Michael's Facebook posts. Hey Michael, send my love to your parents, wherever they may be, in heaven or earth. Molly Zimmerman. I remember Molly was probably in her early 20s when I first met her. She was extremely wise for her age. I have many fond memories of talking to her. Yes, she loved to meditate. Meditation is truly the string that ties us together. Fast forward 40 years, and I love to read her posts. She is living in California. David Anderson. David used to play this one song that would send shivers down my brother's John's and my back. I don't remember the name of the song. It was over 40 years ago. David has the capability to tap deep within his soul and create such beautiful music. Billy Riggs. I love Billy. He was a great tennis player. His dad was the famous Bobby Riggs. Billy practiced Tai Chi many years with Joe Lopez. I remember Billy was close friends with Paul McLean in the 70s. There was a short time where we were all roommates. Elise Kaplan. There was a short period of time where Elise and I were boyfriend and girlfriend. I once stayed at her parents' house for a week. I loved her mother. She was into the healing arts in the early 70s. I remember in Denver, Elise made this tofu Chinese peapod dish with hoisin sauce. It was out of this world. At the time, it was probably at the forefront of the culinary world. My heart goes out to Elise. Wherever you are, I send my love. Jenny Dowd. Well, it's a brand new year. It's 2019. I've been thinking about this story for some time now. When I was young, I read the autobiography of a yogi. This was about the life of Paramahansa Yogananda. I was totally mesmerized by the book. He used scientific laws of the day to describe spirituality. I love the story, how a friend of his said that his life was based on hocus pocus. To make a long story short, Yogananda challenged his friend to a test. They would buy a one-way ticket to a town around a 2-hour train ride. They would carry no money. They would not ask for any help along the way. In the book, they go over great details on their journey. His friend freaks out constantly, yet many incredible events happen along the way. They are completely taken care of. This took place in the early 1900s. Fast forward to the mid-70s. Jenny and I are driving to the airport, and our passengers are a group called One Foundation. They are an incredible band. All their equipment is in the van. Somehow along the way, Jenny and I somehow decide to go to Switzerland. One Foundation was going to a festival her Raji was attending. Mind you, here are the obstacles. We had no money. We had no extra clothes. We had no passport. We had no airline tickets. We were simply dropping off the band at the airport. Well, we watched minor miracles take place. I won't tell the whole story. It's quite elaborate. Anyway, we get our boarding passes, and the members of the band couldn't believe it. It was quite the journey. Jenny met some people from Greece and stayed with them in Greece for about around a month. Many people would think that this is a crazy thing to do. Yet this has happened many times on my journey around the world. If you truly trust the universe, you will be taken care of. Many times, it will not be what you think should happen. I carry this truth in my daily life. We all hit potholes in this journey of life. Our experiences on how we react often determine our state of awareness. The same event can happen to two separate people. One person will totally freak out, while the other person will simply smile. As George Harrison once said, all things must pass. To be honest, at that time, I truly had no idea what he was talking about. It was a foreign language. After many moons, I understand these wise words. My life has been a blessing. I have had many incredible learning lessons along the way. This is a tip of the iceberg. I will always remember Jenny. I wish I met her father. Jenny acquired many of his traits. I enjoyed reading her posts on Facebook. Jenny, you have a special place in my heart. Mar, New York friends. Chef L. Jack. I first met Chef in India in 1971. I have great memories of him. I remember a road trip that we had where we stopped along the way to his parents' house in Ohio. His dad was a dentist. He provided dental care for around 7 or 8 of us. Nice family. They welcomed us with open arms. I was a roommate for about a year with Chef. Of course, he loved to meditate. I haven't seen or heard from him in 30 years. Teddy Tannenbaum. I stayed in Teddy's house for a short period of time. Teddy was a kick to be around. I remember one of his famous sayings that what he said. He said that when a train is traveling fast through a station, you just take off your hat and bow to the train. You are not going to stop the train. I like that. Teddy is a genius at organizing events and businesses. He's been doing this for many years. I have many fond memories of Teddy. The last time I heard from Teddy was he was at John Byers' house in Malibu for a visit. Paul Berenger. Once again, another story about the thread of life tying us together. In the early 70s, my brother John became good friends with Paul. My brother John would tell me about Paul. Who is this Paul? Well, fast forward a few years, I meet Paul in New York City. I worked for Paul for about a year. I remember the great time. We worked on his parents' house while they were out of town. We drove back into Manhattan. I remember getting out of my car and closed the door. Suddenly, the entire lights went out for the entire city. That was quite the experience. Hey Paul, I'd love to hear from you again. Randy Berenger. I first met Randy in India. It was 1971. She was an incredible dancer. I remember her dancing in Krishna Leela. I met some incredible friends through her. I remember one of her friends was dancing with Alvin Ailey, a world-famous dance troupe. Randy was the delight to be around. She has a kind heart and sweet personality. Jamie Henson. As I remember, Jamie was good friends with Fran and Kareem. I really liked Jamie. She thought outside of the box. The last time I saw her was in California in the mid-80s. She invited me to her house. We had a great time catching up on things. Rick Simon. Rick and I were roommates twice, once in New York and Buffalo, New York. Rick was extremely sincere. I have had many incredible memories of him. He opened a business called Simple Simon in the late 70s. It was years ahead of his time. He used the best ingredients in his candies. I liked the idea he used carrot powder in many of his candies. Jay and Paula Good. I will always remember the Goods. I knew them in New York and South Florida. They were both incredible to be around. They had a great sense of humor. They lived down the block from us while I lived in Florida. I remember visiting them and having a great time. I haven't heard from them in years. Kathleen Shannon. I first met Kathleen and her sister in New York City. While I was living in Miami Beach, we once again reconnected. There's definitely a thread that ties us together. I saw her quite frequently as we were doing service at the same house. I have great memories of Kathleen. Let's see where the next connection will be. Bruce Horney. I was roommates with Bruce. Bruce was quite the character. He could have been a model. He looked exactly like John Travolta. I remember this incredible vanilla ice cream pie that he gave me the recipe. It was an instant hit for all my friends. Buffalo, France. Rick Milkus. I loved Rick. He could put a smile on anyone's face. I've known Rick for many years. I haven't seen him in over 30 years. Rick adds to the spice of life. He loves to meditate. What else can I say? Dina Eccles. Dina wasn't from Buffalo. I remember going from Buffalo, New York to Rochester, New York in a huge snowstorm. It was virtually a whiteout. Barbara Kolodny was in the car. Dina, I really didn't know you very well, but I was impressed by your presence. I can't quite pinpoint it. How can you pinpoint the infinite? Years later, I love to read your post. Curtis Gold. I first met Curtis in Buffalo, New York in the 70s. Kurt was always a delight to be around. I remember Kurt had a zest for life. I think it was custom made for him. I would say he would think outside of the box. Years later, I see his Facebook post. He is selling his incredible soups at open-air markets in the Northeast. Great guy, great friend. Kathy Deutsch. Kathy is another person who I love to be around. I knew her in New York City and Buffalo. There was a time when I lived in Florida we would get together. Fast forward 40 years, and I love to read her posts. She has such a wonderful family. I love her heart. She has some friends of hers that I have known for over 40 years. Once again, the thread of life that ties us all together. Richard Scarborough. Richard and I go way back. I first met him in Buffalo, New York during the 80s. During the 80s, I moved to California. I spent some time windsurfing with him. He moved to Asheville, North Carolina a few years ago. Great guy. Loved spending time with him. Yes, he loves to meditate. Jack Levington. Jack and I go back 45 years or so. I knew him in New York City. I remember playing basketball with him. Jack is extremely tall. The only way I could shoot was to do my famous hook shot. Jack has a tremendous sense of humor. I love being around him. Tom and Nancy Owen. I remember first meeting them in Buffalo in the late 70s. In the early 80s, we lived in the same complex as they did. Tom was a great carpenter. I really loved both of them. Nancy had a heart of gold. I really mean that. Both of them truly enjoyed life to its fullest. Steve Kowarski. Steve was another great person to be around. I never met his wife. Steve loved to meditate. Years later, I love to see his posts on Facebook. Both of them truly are expressing their deep feelings into their life. I like that. Barbara Kolodny. Barbara wasn't from Buffalo. She spent some time there. I first met her in New York City. She wasn't from there either. Barbara definitely had a huge aura of love around her. I remember making these incredible sandwiches in Rochester, New York with her. They were out of this world. The sauce was incredible. I haven't seen nor heard about her in 40 years. Wherever you are, Barbara, I send my love. John Roberts. I first met John through my friend Buddy Owens. I had just returned home from my journeys around the world. Buddy was living with some friends who I became friends to them. They all learned how to meditate. John was an incredible person to be around. He lived life to its fullest. He had quite the humble and loving demeanor. John smiled at life. Once again, the web of life connects us all. One of John's roommates is Bob Haxton, who 30 years later is living in Ashland, Oregon. We had the same spiritual path with two identical teachers. John and I decided to take a surf trip to Mexico. John had this incredible VW camper. John just bought the Wings' first album, and we played it over and over. We drove from California to Mazatlan. We spent a day or two there and traveled to San Blas. San Blas is famous for Matagem Bay. This can be the longest wave to ride in North America. On a good day, you can ride a wave for over a mile. I have never seen that yet. I see the potential. I've ridden tiny waves for probably a quarter of a mile. John and I surfed at this river mouth just outside of town. It was always consistent. We had it to ourselves. Great fun lefts were had by all. We continued our drive to Puerto Escondido. I was there a year before, but I had no surfboard. This surf spot is for experts only. The waves can be huge. Even on a small day, the waves break extremely hard and violent. We got some incredible waves. Back then, it was an unknown surf destination. Today, the entire world knows of this surf spot. John was a great surf partner. We definitely had adventures along the way. Our goal was to go to Central America. One night, while we were sleeping, someone stole John's surfboards. We drove on a dusty dirt road to Oaxaca and visited Malte Alba, a famous pre-Columbian archaeological site. We also visited the Tule tree. It's believed the tree is about 2,000 years old. Local legend holds that the tree was planted 1,400 years ago by a priest of the Aztec storm god. According to National Geographic, it's the inspiration for an annual festival in Oaxaca, celebrated on the second Monday of October. We spent a few days there and drove to Mexico City. I lived there for two years. Our house was across the street from Chapultepec Park. I enjoyed seeing my Mexican friends. They welcomed John and I into their household. I will always cherish my time with John. Last time I saw him was 10 years ago in Ashland, Oregon. My dear friend Richie died a few days ago.
I haven't seen him in over 30 years. He was a great singer. He loved to meditate. Combine these two, and he sang like an angel. He could light up an auditorium when he sang. Richie was humble. There was no aura of, look how great I am. He just loved to sing. Richie and I worked together for a few years. We would laugh and tell stories while we worked. Even after all this time, I feel our friendship will never go away. Rest in peace, Richie. May you sing forever.
I just learned a few days ago that Mahatma Rajaswar passed on. Joan After was kind to post on Facebook. Rajaswar was loved by thousands of people. He had a great heart. He was kind, compassionate, and full of love. In his early days, he was a great judge to Indians. He was a beacon of light to all. People from all around the world have written about their love for the man. He was wise and practiced what he preached. Rajaswar was extremely funny and loved to laugh. His most famous quote was, "A meeting without eating is cheating." To this day, there are probably thousands of people who remember his quoting this. I remember one Canada's Thanksgiving Day when he came to cook for around 6 people. He was an incredible cook. I will never forget the laughter and sense of family among us. Everyone would consider him as a friend. He had a way to make you feel good about yourself. I look back and we were all quite young and naive, yet he had a way to embrace all around him in kindness. Kindness is sort of lost in the world today, yet I love the theory that death is the scattering of ashes throughout the universe. This means the true essence of Rajaswar exists inside of us. His body may be gone, yet his soul is eternal. He has gone back to the source of all. Our sweet memories of him will live forever until we meet again.
Rest in peace, Bihari Singh. Joan Apter posted this on Facebook a few days ago. Bihari Singh passed away peacefully in Jaipur at 2:30 p.m. on March 5th, 2020. His funeral procession will take place on March 6th at his birthplace, Ram Singh Kai Dihan, near Koi, Patali. I met Bihari Ji in 1969 in Dehradun, India, when I first knocked at the door of Prem Rawat's residence. He traveled to the west with Prem in 1971. We called him Hanuman because of his great love and his great strength. He was almost 90 years old. Fly free, dear Bihari. Feel our love with you. Update. Just got this YouTube interview of Bihari. Super powerful. The following is Richard's experience with Bihari Singh. When I was in India, the Indians in general had a whole different idea of the style of cooking. Their concept was to cook a meal for the Lord. Imagine all the care, love, and kindness you would put into the food. Cooking would become an art and devotion. This food would then be presented, blessed, and served to your family and friends. I love that idea. Fast forward to the present, we have cooking shows like Chopped, where they have 20 minutes to cook a dish. They go around in the kitchen and slap together a dish to be judged by. The audience, including myself, is entertained by that. Yet, are they conscious? Are there frustrations about time, the rushing around, competition between competitors, and the anger goes into the food? How about fast food restaurants like Burger King? This is a profit-driven company. Do they cook with a concept of cooking the meal for the Lord? You can answer that question yourself. Bihari Singh brought this incredible picture, practice, to the West. From the very beginning, when Prem first came to the West, he helped teach many different Westerners to Indian cooking and the philosophy of cooking from love. I had the joy watching him cook in India, South Africa, and the United States. He was a master in the kitchen. I know a few of his students, and boy, can they ever cook. I would rather have a meal cooked by them than any professional chef in the world. Here's some of my favorite moments with Bihari. During the first day of the program, my twin brother John came to the program. I was pleasantly surprised. He was living in Utah, and somehow he ended up here. In the next couple of days, he received knowledge. He was quite blown away. One funny incident was that Prem never knew I had a twin brother. Bihari wanted to play a trick on Prem. He got us both together and said, "Prem, look at this. This will blow your mind." He looked over and did a double take. He turned to us in amazement and said, "Wow, this is the first time God ever made a mistake. He made Richard twice." We all laughed. One day, we went to the Cape of Good Hope. It was an incredible sight to behold the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean merging at one point. I remember at one point Prem and the group had a race to get to the top of the stairs. I couldn't believe how fast he ran. He beat us all by a long shot. I thought with all my training I was fast. When I got to the top, I was breathing quite hard. Prem was hardly breathing. I remember at one point a South African photographer took our picture. There were three of us: Prem, his longtime bodyguard Bihari Singh, and myself. We placed our arms on the top of each shoulder, just like kids, and said, "Cheese." That was a great moment. Bihar had a twinkle in his eyes. He was saying non-verbally, "Wow, betcha you will never forget this in your life." This was 48 years ago. During the 80s, I lived in Miami Beach. Alex Shea, Bihar, and I would play tennis a lot. Many times he would go to Bihari's house and cook incredible Indian food. We would first watch a Bollywood movie. We had so much fun. I will never forget it. I read on Facebook hundreds of people talking about their love for Bihari. Each one was touched by him. He literally had thousands of friends all around the world. Rest in peace, Bihari. You are home with your beloved small.
David Humphrey. I first met David when I was 18 years old. We were both in India in an ashram named Premnagar. We became instant friends. This is where the thread of life ties us together. A year later, I introduced my brother John to David. They became instant friends. Many people think that all of us are brothers. David has carried on the tradition of being a world-class jeweler. The following is an excerpt from an article by Robert Weldon for Professional Jeweler magazine. Years ago, before he had a storefront, Humphrey quietly sold ancient treasures and secret and select gemstones to a few chosen customers in Los Angeles. During this time, he would visit Richard T. Litcote, chairman of the Geological Institute of America, and a friend, mentor, and inspiration. GIS staffers recall looking forward to Humphrey's visits and the treasures that would tumble from his pockets one by one. An Art Deco ice pin, a magnificent parabola tourmaline. His store today captures that same sense of mystery and wonder. David believes in the power of connections and started to establish them long before he opened his store. In the past 2 decades, he has forged friendships and business relationships with many people, including museum curators and auction house directors with whom he can share information about ancient pieces he buys or sells. These people are scholars, consumer and experts with high standards, he says. He also lists a number of artists in the musical and theatrical fields as his friends and clients. Humphrey prefers to keep the names quiet and prides himself on creating a comfortable atmosphere for everyone in which to experience the treasures he has to offer. Flamboyance is not something David Humphrey is comfortable with, yet his jewelry has graced actresses and music superstars at such high-profile events at the Academy Awards. The above comments truly reflects David's nature. He simply smiles at life. He's been meditating for 47 years. He truly enjoys the gift of life. Now to the next step in the web of life. Around 1982, I live in Miami Beach. My brother John introduces me to Jerry Whitesides. Jerry is also a surfer. 10 years later, he is married to David's ex-wife. When I moved back to California, I would go to Oxnard and surf with my brother and Jerry. David only lived a few blocks away in the Palisades. I'm living next door to the Self-Realization Fellowship Center. This is a meditation center opened by Paramahansa Yogananda in the 1950s. Well, our family moved to Miami in 1991. Jerry lived on the Big Island with his wife Nina, who was David's ex-wife. Some people love resorts to chill out. Jerry was renting a resort. For around $1,000 a month, he got an incredible deal to rent this gorgeous house and property. Imagine on his property was 2 pools, a saltwater pool and a freshwater pool. Right next door was a famous surf spot called Linus. We could paddle out right from his house into the lineup. The wave was a left point break where you can get incredible rides. Usually at unknown spots, it takes time to become familiar with the fellow surfers. Jerry introduced me to them, and I got to have some incredible waves come my way. My family slept outside on the porch, where there was a comfortable bed. The sound of the ocean would be heard the entire night. This is paradise. Nina and my wife Barbara become instant friends. Jerry and his family took us twice to the Waipio Valley. To get to the valley, you have to take an extremely steep road down to the valley. It was one of the steepest roads I ever seen. Here's an expert from the website, The Most Dangerous Roads in America. Waipio Valley Road is a short, steep road in the Big Island of Hawaii, restricted to 4x4s. It is the steepest road of its length in the United States. The road is steep enough to destroy brakes on the way down, with some 45% grade sections. The road is difficult, and it's a nightmare in the wet or dark or both. It links Waipio Overlook at the western end of Honokaya Waipio Road, State Route 240, down into the Waipio Valley. In the Hamaka district, while the road is now paved and only about 3/4 mile long, the 25% average grade, said to be up to 45% at some points, takes the road down about 900 feet down to the valley floor. It's steep enough to destroy brakes on the way down and stall engines on the way up. The road is therefore restricted to 4x4s, which you need anyway to navigate the unpaved roads on the valley floor, and hikers with strong legs. This road is not for the faint of heart. It is a 45-degree angle all the way down, and the only way to make it is with the 4-wheel drive in low gear. It is a single-lane road, and folks going down have to yield to folks coming up. I will never forget the great hospitality of the Whitesides family. Jerry passed away about 10 years ago. Rest in peace, Jerry. I will never forget you and the incredible times we had together. You touched many people's hearts. Our journeys go on. I give my love and gratitude to David and the Whitesides family. More spiritual friends. Joan After. Wow, Joan has 4,977 friends on Facebook. I first met Joan when I was 18 in India. Joan truly loves life and loves to meditate. I haven't seen her in over 40 years. Yet, every year on Facebook, she sends me an incredible birthday card. Joan is a legend around the world. You may not have known her, but she is instrumental in helping so many people in discovering their true nature. I love spending time with her. Keep on writing those Facebook posts. Mark Putnam. I first met Mark in Bethesda, Maryland in 1977. Mark has a keen sense of humor and a great laugh. Of course, he loves to meditate. I love to read his posts on Facebook. Nancy Brown. I first met Nancy in Denver in 1972. Always remember the great times we had together. Fast forward 30 years, and she is living in the same town, Pacific Palisades. It was a great time reconnecting. Since then, she lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, my old stomping grounds in the 70s. I will always treasure such a unique person. Gwen Harrington. I first met Gwen in the 70s. Here's another web that ties us together. Gwen's best friend on the Big Island is married to Eric Weiner, who I have known since junior high school. What a small world. Gwen is also a great friend of Kali, who I had many incredible adventures with. I have many fond memories of Gwen. Aloha, sending love to you and the Weiners. Richard Sand. Richard is a great friend to my brother John and Hanali. They have known each other since the 70s. Recently, they had a chance to spend time together after many years. Richard definitely thinks outside of the box. He has been teaching and learning shamanic wisdom for many years. Thanks, Richard, for the friendship we have shared. William Fairchild. Rest in peace, Billy. Billy was an incredible character in life. Thousands of people knew about Billy. He had quite the sense of humor. Billy loved life, and life loved Billy. He had quite the heart. I spent many moments in various parts of the States with Billy. Tim Galloway. Here's what an article described about Tim Galloway. The inner game of everything. Why is it a 4-decade-old tennis book still a self-help sensation? A Harvard English major wrote The Inner Game of Tennis in 1972. A million copies later, its ideas are some of the most influential in sports and beyond, taken seriously by actors, politicians, and even sex researchers. What's its secret? Maybe there is no secret. I first met Tim in India in 1971. I was 18 years old, just a kid. With his meditation practice, Tim had the insight to write this book and launch him into a highly successful career. In the 70s, I spent some time with Tim. He was always an inspiration to be around. Arthur Brigham. I first met Arthur in the 70s in Denver, Colorado. I haven't seen him in many years. In the last 7 years, we have reconnected through Facebook. I love to see that he is married and has a family. He lives in Japan. We both love to meditate. When he talks about his family, I can see it brings him such pleasure to his life. Doug Bernard. I first met Doug in Portland, Oregon in 1973. I really liked him. I remember that he asked me if the world would be around in the year 2000. I said no. Thank God I was wrong. Doug is married to Mary Doors, who I spent time with in Florida. Once again, the thread of life that ties us all together. Carol Scher. I first met Carol in Portland, Oregon in 1973. As you can see, she has bright red hair. Carol was a delight to be around. She sparkled life all around. She is always in a good mood. I treasure my time with her. About the Rainbow Gypsies. In 1969, a band of self-styled hippie gypsies clad in rainbow rags and waving their freak flag high danced their way around the world, from their homes in America to an ashram on the banks of the Ganges. Set in the psychedelic 60s, the Rainbow Gypsies is a unique journey that simply could not be made today. Lothar and Ricardo Delgado. They were one of the main characters in the Rainbow Gypsies. I first met Lothar and Ricardo in India in 1971. They were part of the Rainbow Gypsies. They were incredible dancers and danced around the world. Both of them learned how to meditate and still practice today. I have many fond memories of them. They were older than I was. I remember a great party I attended in Miami Beach in the mid-80s. Their house was on the beach. Great time for all. Both of them love the ventures of life. Love you guys. David and Sally Richmond. David recently wrote a book on Wilt Chamberlain. When he was around 10 years old, he stayed in his house for a year. David wrote an exceptional and wise book about him. I never knew the depth of Wilt's wisdom. David and I had a great friend in common, Richie Ingley. Sending my love to the Richmond family. It's been many moons since I have seen you. Charles Cameron. I first met Charles in India in 1971. He was from England. He graduated from Cambridge. His passion was writing and poetry. Charles had a great sense of humor. You could say it was almost dry, British style. I have many fond memories of them. He was a great public speaker and storyteller. Joram Weiss. I have known Joram for many years. He is very inspirational to me. Each year on my birthday, he would message me a birthday greeting. Here's an example of the latest one. Happy birthday, dear Richard. There's a synchronicity in this universe. With each cycle around the sun, your heart rises with more beauty, deeper wisdom, and ever sweeter love. May the richness of your heart expand every space in your life and light them all up with abundance of your gifts and your kindness. Happy birthday to you, Joram. Randy Marder. I first met Randy in LA and then in India. My brother John and I have many great memories of them. He loves life. Randy loves to restore old houses. He also loves to meditate. My heart goes out to Randy and his family. Jock Sandos. I first met Jock in India in 1971. He comes from Switzerland and has a brilliant family. His uncle Albert discovered LSD in Sandoz labs in 1939. Jock was a filmmaker. I had many incredible times with him. He was a giant for his time, extremely progressive in his thinking. John Slowski. My partner, John Slowski, and I were both two ahead of our time. We developed in 1986 the first visual real estate program. Imagine doing a search for a house. Photos of all the houses would appear on the screen. Click on the house you like, and it would take you on a tour of the house. At that time, the real estate market was quite archaic. They said, we take all our customers to search for a house by a car. We said this tool can save you and your clients time by narrowing down the search. We told them that in the future, everyone, including your grandma, would be using this tool. Voila, the entire world's real estate market has tools just like this. We won awards at trade shows, but was too advanced for its time. My dear friend John Slowski and I developed On Maui Com in 1996. It was quite revolutionary for its time. John did all the graphics for the site. Since then, John has been on the forefront of graphic design. Check out Slowski.com. We developed 3 virtual towns in Maui, Malkawa, Paia, and Lahaina. Imagine back then, we didn't have Google walkthroughs of towns. John and I developed something similar to what we have today. For example, I took photos of the towns in Maui. John then stitched together the photos. Back then, Vermo virtual reality market language was just taking off. By the way, it didn't make it. We created virtual walkthroughs of these towns. You can stroll down the street and go into surfboard shops and art galleries. You can even buy things. Years later, we have Google Maps, where instead of a person walking down the street, they have this car with a built-in camera that could capture an image of our towns in minutes. John was also a surfer. John also loved to meditate. John loved to be creative. What else can I say? We're both peas in a pod. I have known John since 1972. He was a great friend to my brother John. I haven't seen John in many moons. He is still dear to my heart. We all have such incredible friends on this journey of life. I feel so fortunate meeting John.